The void of space erupted in brilliant flashes as 10,000 warships materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system. The Zeltharian Empire's invasion fleet stretched across the darkness like a swarm of metal predators, their hulls gleaming with the cold light of distant stars. Each vessel bristled with weapons capable of turning entire cities to glass, their energy cores humming with barely contained destruction. Admiral Kethvar stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Death's Herald, watching the tactical displays with predatory satisfaction. His reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. Behind him, dozens of officers monitored their stations, their scaled hands dancing across alien controls that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. "Fleet status report," Kethvar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered worlds. "All vessels have successfully translated from hyperspace, Admiral," reported his second-in-command, Commander Zethrol. "Formation. Integrity maintained. No casualties during jump sequence." Kethvar nodded approvingly. The Zeltharian Empire had perfected the art of overwhelming force. 10,000 ships of various classes filled the scanner displays. Massive dreadnoughts capable of cracking moons, swift destroyers designed to hunt down fleeing vessels, and carrier ships loaded with fighter craft that could swarm enemy positions like metallic locusts. "Initiate deep system scan," he ordered. "Let's see what these humans have to offer us." The ship's advanced sensors reached across the solar system, probing every asteroid, every moon, every orbital body for signs of military presence. What they found made several officers chuckle with amusement. "Sir, we're detecting minimal defensive signatures from the third planet," reported Lieutenant Vexthok from the tactical station. His voice carried barely concealed mirth. "A few orbital stations, maybe 20 primitive vessels in high orbit. Their largest ships appear to be cargo haulers converted for military use." Another officer looked up from his console, mandibles clicking with laughter. "Admiral, their energy signatures are pathetic. Most of their vessels are still using chemical propulsion systems. Some appear to be powered by primitive fusion reactors." Kethvar walked to the main viewing port, gazing out at the blue-green marble that hung in the distance. Earth looked peaceful, almost defenseless. White clouds swirled over brown and green continents, while a single grey moon orbited nearby, like a faithful guardian. It was beautiful in its own way, but beauty meant nothing to the Empire. "Standard pre-space civilization setup," he mused aloud. "They've barely crawled out of their gravity well. This would indeed be conquest number 848 for the Zeltharian Empire. Another primitive world to be stripped of resources, its population either enslaved or relocated to mining colonies on the outer rim. The pattern had been repeated across hundreds of star systems over the past millennium. The Empire's doctrine was simple and brutal. Locate developing civilizations before they could become threats, overwhelm them with superior technology, and absorb their resources into the ever-growing imperial machine. Most species never even had time to send out distress signals. "Begin approach vector," Kethvar commanded. "Standard intimidation formation. I want them to see exactly what they're facing." The fleet began its slow advance toward the inner system, their massive engines casting long trails of exotic particles behind them. Each ship's weapons systems powered up automatically, targeting computers already calculating firing solutions for Earth's pitiful orbital defenses. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, Commander Li Jun sat in a command center that seemed almost ancient by comparison to the Zeltharian technology. The walls were lined with screens showing data feeds from across the solar system, but the equipment looked decades old. Coffee cups and handwritten notes cluttered workstations where human operators monitored the approaching threat with surprising calm. "Contact bearing 27 Mark 15, announced Sergeant Cho Min from the FUR. "Sensor station, massive energy signatures. I'm counting, dear God, over 10,000 individual contacts." Captain Park Hana looked up from her communications console, her face pale but determined. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Standard Imperial." Surrender demands in multiple languages. June studied the tactical display showing the enormous alien fleet. Each red dot represented firepower that could level continents. By all rights, humanity should be terrified. Instead, the command center maintained an almost eerie calm. "Open a channel," June said quietly, adjusting his uniform jacket. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Kethvar's imposing form. The alien admiral's reptilian features dominated the display, his yellow eyes glowing with predatory intelligence. When he spoke, his words were translated into crisp English by the Empire's universal communication protocols. "Primitive humans of the third planet," Kethvar announced, his voice carrying across space with absolute authority. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zeltharian Imperial Navy. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. You will power down all defensive systems, prepare your population centers for occupation, and surrender your planetary governments immediately. Resistance will result in the complete annihilation of your species." The transmission included tactical data showing the size and firepower of the Imperial fleet, a psychological weapon designed to crush hope before the first shot was fired. Most civilizations surrendered within minutes of seeing such overwhelming force. June leaned forward in his chair, meeting the alien admiral's gaze through the screen. His voice remained steady, almost conversational. "This is your first and final warning. Leave our system immediately." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving silence in the alien command center. Several Zeltharian officers looked at each other, in confusion. In 800 years of conquest, no primitive species had ever responded to Imperial demands with a threat of their own. In the buried command center on Earth, Captain Kim Dae's fingers moved across controls that hadn't been activated in 2 centuries. Ancient systems began powering up throughout the solar system, their energy signatures carefully masked to appear as nothing more than background radiation. The real defenses of humanity were finally awakening. Admiral Kethvar's laughter boomed. Across the bridge of the Death's Herald, a sound that made several junior officers flinch, the reptilian commander slapped his scaled hand against the armrest of his command chair, his yellow eyes gleaming with predatory amusement. "Did that pathetic creature just threaten us?" he wheezed between laughs. "A species that barely knows how to leave their own planet thinks they can intimidate the Zeltharian Empire." Commander Zethral joined in the laughter, his mandibles clicking together in what passed for mirth among their species. "Admiral, perhaps we should record this moment for the Imperial archives. Future generations will find it amusing that such primitives once believed they could stand against our might." The bridge crew erupted in similar sounds of alien amusement. Officers who had witnessed the destruction of entire star systems found the human response delightfully absurd. In their experience, primitive species either begged for mercy or simply went silent when faced with Imperial power. "Sir, shall we proceed with standard orbital bombardment protocols?" asked Weapons Officer Grickstall, his clawed fingers hovering over targeting controls. "I can have their major population centers reduced to ash within the hour." Kethvar held up a scaled hand, his laughter subsiding into a cruel smile. "Not yet, Lieutenant. These humans seem to have spirit. Let's have some sport with them first, before we end their miserable existence." He turned to his tactical officer. "Deploy advanced screening force. 12 destroyers should be more than sufficient to deal with whatever toys these primitives have floating around their system." The Imperial fleet began its methodical advance toward the inner solar system, their massive engines casting brilliant blue flames against the star-speckled darkness. The formation was a thing of terrible beauty, thousands of ships moving in, perfect coordination, their hulls bristling with weapons that could turn planets into cosmic dust. As they passed the orbit of Mars, long-range scanners detected movement near the asteroid belt. 3 small human vessels had taken position in their path, floating in space like insects challenging a thunderstorm. "Contact," announced the sensor operator. 3 human vessels, bearing 187 Mark IV. They appear to be intercepting our advance force. Kethvar studied the tactical display with growing amusement. The human ships were tiny compared to Imperial destroyers, no larger than Zeltharian patrol boats. Their energy signatures suggested primitive fusion drives and what appeared to be conventional weapons systems. "Magnify visual display," he commanded. The main screen shifted to show the 3 human vessels in detail, They looked almost fragile compared to the angular, predatory lines of Imperial warships. Their hulls were smooth and white, with geometric patterns that seemed more artistic than functional. No obvious weapon ports were visible. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "the lead human vessel is broadcasting on military frequencies." "Put them through. This should be entertaining." The screen flickered to show the bridge of the human ship. A woman in a simple blue uniform sat in the captain's chair, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her name tag read Captain Yun-Su in both Korean and English characters. What struck Kethvar immediately was her complete lack of fear. Most alien captains faced with Imperial destroyers either screamed threats or begged for mercy. This human simply sat calmly, as if having tea with friends. "Imperial vessels," Captain Yun said in a conversational tone, "you are trespassing in our space. Turn back now." The Zeltharian bridge crew erupted in fresh laughter. 12 massive destroyers, each one capable of devastating continents, were being warned away by 3 tiny human patrol craft. "Human captain," Kethvar replied through the translation system. "You command toys against warships. Stand down and prepare to be boarded or be destroyed." Captain Yoon's expression never changed. She simply turned to someone off-screen and said one word: "Fire." What happened next defied everything the Zeltharians understood about space combat. The 3 human ships didn't launch missiles or fire energy beams. Instead, space around them seemed to shimmer and bend. Reality itself appeared to twist, and suddenly 12 Imperial destroyers simply stopped existing. There was no explosion, no debris field, no energy discharge. One moment the destroyers were advancing in perfect formation, their crews preparing to capture the human vessels. The next moment, there was only empty space where they had been. On the Death's Herald, every alarm on the bridge began screaming at once. Tactical officers stared at their displays in confusion, running diagnostic checks to make sure their equipment wasn't malfunctioning. "Report!" Kethvar roared, his amusement evaporating instantly. "Sir, we've lost contact with the advance force," stammered the communications officer. "All 12 destroyers show no life signs, no energy signatures, they're just gone." The weapons officer looked up from his console, scales pale with shock. "Admiral, sensors show no weapon discharge from the human vessels. No energy beams, no missile launches, nothing that could account for—" "Then how are my ships destroyed?" Kethvar's voice carried a dangerous edge that made his crew step carefully. "Unknown, sir. Their weapons technology appears to be unusual." Kethvar stared at the tactical display where 12 red dots had simply vanished. In 8 centuries of conquest, the Empire had never encountered anything like this. Even the most advanced civilizations they'd faced used recognizable physics. Energy, weapons, kinetic projectiles, exotic matter warheads. This was something else entirely. The 3 human patrol vessels remained in position, unmarked and undamaged. Captain Yoon's image still filled part of the main screen, her expression unchanged from the beginning of the encounter. "Any further Imperial vessels approaching our territory will meet the same fate," she said simply, then closed the channel. Deep beneath Earth's surface, General Omin stood in a command center that stretched for kilometers through the planet's crust. Ancient corridors carved from living rock housed technology that had been sleeping for 2 centuries, waiting for this moment. Massive quantum processors hummed to life, their crystalline cores pulsing with energy that bent space-time itself. Weapons, systems that operated on principles the Zeltharians couldn't imagine, began charging their exotic matter reservoirs. "Sir, all primary defense grids are now fully operational," reported Lieutenant Bei Sun from her station overlooking banks of holographic displays, lunar installations, asteroid belt platforms, outer system monitoring stations. Everything is online and ready. Around them, hundreds of technicians worked at control stations that seemed to grow from the rock walls themselves. The technology was seamless, organic in appearance, but impossibly advanced. Screens showed tactical data from across the solar system as humanity's real defenses revealed themselves. "Stealth fields are holding," announced another officer. "The Imperial fleet still reads our installations as background radiation and space debris." General Omin nodded, watching displays that showed the true scope of humanity's preparations. Hidden bases throughout the solar system, weapons platforms disguised as asteroids, ships that existed in folded space until needed, all the fruits of centuries of patient preparation. "The first demonstration was successful," he said quietly. "Now they know we're not helpless, but they don't know how powerful we really are." He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to the Imperial flagship. It's time for their second warning." The message that reached Admiral Kethvar was simple and direct. "You were warned, leave now or face the consequences." But this time, the Zeltharian admiral was no longer laughing. Admiral Kethvar's scaled fists slammed against his command console, sending sparks flying from damaged circuits. The loss of 12 destroyers had shaken him, but his pride burned, hotter than his confusion. No primitive species had ever humiliated the Zeltharian Empire like this. "Enough games," he snarled, his yellow eyes blazing with fury. "These insects think their parlor tricks can intimidate us? They're about to learn what happens when you challenge the Empire." He turned to his fleet coordinator, voice dripping with venom. "Deploy Assault Formation Theta 7, 2,000 ships, full bombardment configuration. Target their lunar installations first. Show them what real firepower looks like." Commander Zethral hesitated. "Sir, perhaps we should analyze how they destroyed our advance force before committing so many vessels." "Analysis is for cowards," Kethvar roared. "We are the Zeltharian Empire. We have conquered 847 worlds. These pathetic humans will learn their place or burn." The massive Imperial fleet began reorganizing itself, with 2,000 of its most powerful warships breaking away from the main formation. Dreadnoughts the size of cities moved alongside heavy cruisers bristling with plasma cannons. Fighter carriers deployed swarms of attack craft that darkened the space between them like metallic clouds. The assault force accelerated toward Earth's moon, their engines painting brilliant trails across the void. Each ship carried enough firepower to level continents, and their combined might could crack planets in half. The lunar surface looked peaceful and defenseless beneath them, a collection of small research domes and mining equipment scattered across ancient craters. "Pathetic," sneered Captain Vex Thul from his flagship's bridge. "Look at their installations, barely more than prefabricated shelters and excavation machinery. We'll sweep them away like dust." The Imperial fleet spread into attack formation. As they approached the moon, weapon systems charging with deadly energy. Targeting computers locked onto what appeared to be small research stations and mining facilities. To Zeltharian sensors, nothing on the lunar surface registered as militarily significant. Then the moon woke up. What had looked like simple mining equipment suddenly unfolded like mechanical flowers blooming in fast motion. Structures that appeared to be habitat domes split open to reveal massive weapon barrels pointed skyward. The lunar surface itself began shifting and moving, revealing that the entire moon had been transformed into something impossible. Deep within the moon's core, Colonel Chobin sat in a command center that defied belief. The chamber stretched for kilometers through hollowed-out rock, its walls lined with crystalline displays showing tactical data from across the solar system. Around him, hundreds of technicians worked at stations that seemed grown rather than built, their surfaces pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. "Imperial assault force has entered our engagement zone," reported Major Kim Jun from the tactical station. 2,000 ships in standard bombardment formation. They're targeting our surface installations." Cho Bin studied the holographic display, floating before him, showing the approaching alien fleet in perfect detail. Each red dot represented enough destructive power to devastate cities, but his expression remained calm. "They still think we're primitives," he said quietly. "Time to correct that assumption." The lunar defense grid was humanity's greatest secret. Built over 2 centuries of careful preparation, the moon itself had been hollowed out and transformed into a fortress that could defend against entire fleets. Weapons systems based on principles the galaxy had never seen were powered by the moon's own core. "All batteries fire at will," Chobin commanded. The lunar surface erupted in brilliant light as hundreds of weapon emplacements revealed themselves. Energy beams that bent space itself lanced upward, each one precisely targeted at an Imperial vessel. The weapons didn't fire conventional energy or projectiles. They manipulated fundamental forces, turning the enemy's own mass against them. The first Zeltharian ship to be hit simply folded in on itself, its hull collapsing as local gravity increased 1,000-fold. The second ship found its molecular bonds dissolved as exotic particles rewrote the laws of physics around it. A third vessel experienced time dilation so severe that its crew aged to dust in seconds, while the ship itself became a frozen monument in space. Captain Vexthul watched in horror from his bridge as ships around him died in ways that shouldn't be possible. All vessels, evasive maneuvers, return fire immediately. But there was nowhere to run. The lunar weapons could reach across impossible distances, bending space to strike targets that should have been safely out of range. Imperial shields, designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, offered no protection against attacks that operated outside known physics. "Sir, we've lost contact with Battle Group 7, screamed his communications officer. "Battle. Group 12 is reporting impossible casualties. Their ships are just disappearing." The space around Earth's moon became a graveyard of twisted metal and exotic energy. Imperial dreadnoughts that had terrorized entire star systems were reduced to expanding clouds of particles. Fighter craft found themselves trapped in spatial anomalies that crushed them like invisible hands. On the Death's Herald, Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical display in growing panic. Red dots representing his ships were vanishing from the screen faster than his officers could count them. In 18 minutes of combat, half of his assault force had been reduced to space dust. "This is impossible," he screamed, spittle flying from his reptilian maw. "How can primitives have such weapons? Our intelligence said they were barely capable of interplanetary travel." His science officer looked up from frantically running diagnostics, scales pale with terror. "Sir, their weapons appear to manipulate fundamental forces. They're not using energy beams or projectiles. They're changing the laws of physics around our ships." "That's impossible. Such technology would require understanding of—" Kethvar's voice trailed off as the implications hit him. "Only the most. Ancient civilizations in the galaxy possessed theoretical knowledge of such principles, and none had ever successfully weaponized them." "Admiral," his communications officer called out, fear evident in his alien voice, "incoming transmission from the third planet." The main screen flickered to life, showing Commander Lee Jun sitting calmly in his underground command center. The human looked exactly as he had during their first exchange. No triumph in his expression, no gloating over the destruction of half an Imperial fleet. Just quiet determination. "Admiral Kethvar," Jun said in the same conversational tone he'd used before, "this was your second warning. You still have time to leave our system with your remaining ships." The transmission showed tactical data that made Kethvar's blood run cold. The humans weren't just defending Earth. They had installations throughout the solar system, hidden weapons platforms that registered as asteroids and space debris. The entire system was a trap, and he had flown directly into it. "Your people destroyed half my fleet," Kethvar snarled at the screen. Jun's expression didn't change. "Your people came here to conquer and enslave us. We're simply defending our home." Behind the human commander, Kethvar could see other officers working calmly at their stations. No panic, no celebration over their victory, just professional competence that spoke of long preparation and absolute confidence in their abilities. "How long?" Kethvar found himself asking. "How long have you been preparing?" "Long enough," Jun replied simply. "Leave now, Admiral. Don't make us demonstrate what else we're capable of." The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at empty space where Earth's moon continued its ancient orbit. But now he knew the truth. That innocent-looking satellite was actually a weapons platform that could destroy fleets. For the first time in 8 centuries of conquest, the Zeltharian Empire had encountered something that could fight back and win. Admiral Kethvar's remaining sanity shattered like crystal under pressure. The destruction of half his fleet had pushed him beyond rational thought into pure, murderous rage. His scaled hands gripped his command chair so tightly that the metal groaned under the strain. "No more games!" he roared, spittle flying from his reptilian maw. "These vermin dare to humiliate the Zeltharian Empire. They want to see real power? I'll show them what happens when you anger gods." His bridge crew exchanged worried glances. They had served under HFY for decades and had never seen him lose control like this. The Admiral's yellow eyes blazed with fury that bordered on madness. "Sir," Commander Zethril said carefully, "perhaps we should withdraw and report to High Command. These humans possess technology we don't understand." Silence. HFY's voice echoed through the bridge like thunder. "I will not return to the Empire as a defeated coward. All ships, full assault formation, target the third planet directly." He turned to his weapons officer, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Charge all planetary bombardment weapons. I want every city on that world turned to glass. Kill them all, every man, woman, and child. Let their screams echo across the galaxy as a warning to anyone else who dares defy us." The remaining 8,000 Imperial warships began their final advance toward Earth, their engines burning with terrible purpose. Massive dreadnoughts powered up world-cracking weapons, while heavy cruisers prepared continent-splitting bombs. The combined firepower of the surviving fleet could reduce entire planets to asteroid fields. Earth hung before them like a blue-green jewel, beautiful and apparently defenseless. White clouds swirled over continents, where billions of humans lived their daily lives, unaware that death was approaching from the stars. Then the solar system revealed its true nature. What had appeared to be a simple asteroid floating between Mars and Jupiter suddenly unfolded like an origami sculpture made of metal and crystal. The rocky exterior split apart to reveal a weapons platform the size of a city, its surfaces bristling with devices that hurt to look at directly. Captain Song-Woo stood in the command center of Asteroid Station Alpha 7, watching her tactical displays with calm satisfaction. Around her, dozens of operators worked at consoles that seemed to blend organic curves with technological precision. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a hollowed-out asteroid transformed into humanity's hidden guardian. Imperial. "Fleet has committed to full planetary assault," reported Lieutenant Park Ji from the sensor station. 8,000 ships in bombardment formation, all weapons charging. Song-Woo nodded, studying the holographic display that showed the enemy fleet approaching Earth. Each red dot represented enough firepower to devastate continents, but she felt no fear. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for centuries. "Signal. All stations," she said quietly. "Welcome to Sol System." Across the solar system, space itself began to transform. Asteroids that had drifted peacefully for millennia revealed themselves as camouflaged weapons platforms. What had looked like ordinary space debris unfolded into battle stations equipped with technology that defied understanding. Near Saturn, the planet's rings suddenly disgorged hidden fortresses that had been sleeping among the ice and rock for hundreds of years. Massive installations emerged from the ring particles, like whales breaching the ocean's surface, their hulls gleaming with exotic materials that bent light around them. The Zeltharian fleet found themselves flying not through empty space, but into the heart of the most sophisticated defense network the galaxy had ever seen. Every asteroid, every piece of debris, every seemingly natural object had been positioned with careful precision over centuries of patient preparation. "Contact! Multiple contacts!" screamed the sensor operator aboard the Death's Herald. "Sir, we're reading massive energy signatures from everywhere." Admiral HFY stared at his tactical display as thousands of new contacts appeared around his fleet. Weapons platforms emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, each one targeting his ships with frightening precision. "How many?" he whispered, his rage finally giving way to dawning horror. "Unknown, sir. They're everywhere. The entire system it's all been weaponized." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. It wasn't a chaotic melee between opposing fleets. It was a methodical, surgical demonstration of technological superiority that left the Zeltharians helpless. Human weapons didn't simply destroy their targets. They dissected them with mathematical precision. Ships that had terrorized countless worlds found their hulls peeled apart layer by layer as exotic energy fields separated molecular bonds. Others discovered their own weapons turning against them as control systems were rewritten by quantum viruses. Captain Song-Woo watched the destruction with professional detachment. Target priorities remain the same: disable, then destroy. We want their admiral to witness what happens when you threaten humanity." The asteroid belt defenses alone could have handled the entire Imperial fleet, but they were just one layer of Earth's protection. Hidden bases on the outer planets added their firepower to the engagement. Weapon platforms disguised as comets struck from impossible angles. The Zeltharian Empire's most powerful fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy they had dismissed as primitives. Ships that had cracked planets were reduced to drifting hulks in minutes. Fighters that had swarmed over 1,000 worlds found themselves trapped in spatial distortions that crushed them like insects. Deep beneath Earth's surface, General O. Min stood in his command center, watching the battle unfold across dozens of holographic displays. The vast chamber buzzed with quiet activity as hundreds of officers coordinated humanity's hidden strength. "The galaxy thinks we're young," he said to his assembled staff, his voice carrying across the underground complex. "They look at our public technology and assume we're barely capable of interstellar travel. They don't realize we've been preparing for this day for 800 years. Major Ko-Yun looked up from her console, her face illuminated by streams of tactical data. "Sir, enemy fleet strength is down to 12%. Most remaining vessels are too damaged to pose a threat." O-Min nodded, studying the master tactical display that showed the solar system in perfect detail. Red dots representing Imperial ships were vanishing rapidly as humanity's defenses continued their deadly work. "Casualties on our side?" he asked. "None, sir. All stations report nominal status." The enemy never managed to effectively target our installations. The general allowed himself a small smile. Centuries of preparation had paid off. Humanity had built their defenses not just to survive invasion, but to demonstrate that Earth was far from defenseless. "Current status of the Imperial flagship?" Ko-Yun checked her displays. "The Death's Herald remains functional but heavily damaged. All escort vessels destroyed. Admiral Kethavar is effectively alone." "Good," O-Min said quietly. "Let Admiral Kethavar live. He has a message to deliver to his empire." On the bridge of his crippled flagship, Admiral Kethavar sat in stunned silence, as the last of his escorts was vaporized by weapons he couldn't even see. 8,000 ships, the pride of the Zeltharian Navy, had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris in less than an hour. His bridge was dark except for emergency lighting, most systems offline from damage that should have been impossible to inflict. Around him, his surviving crew worked frantically to keep life support functioning. "Sir," his communications officer said weakly, "incoming transmission from the planet." The screen flickered to life one final time, showing Commander Lee Jun in his underground bunker. The human looked exactly as he had at the beginning, calm, professional, and utterly unshaken by the destruction of an entire Imperial fleet. "Admiral," Jun said simply, "your war is over." Kethavar could only stare as the terrible truth settled over him. The Zeltharian Empire hadn't encountered primitives. They had found humanity's home. Admiral Kethavar sat motionless in his command chair, staring at the twisted wreckage of his bridge. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across damaged consoles that sparked and hissed with dying energy. The proud flagship of the Zeltharian Empire had been reduced to a broken shell, its hull scarred by weapons that defied every law of physics he understood. Around him, the bridge crew lay unconscious, or worse. Commander Zethral slumped over his station, breathing but unresponsive. The weapons officer had been thrown against a bulkhead when the ship's gravity generators failed, his reptilian form crumpled like a discarded toy. Only Kethavar remained conscious, a lone survivor witnessing the complete destruction of his once mighty fleet. Through the cracked viewports, space glittered with debris that had once been 10,000 Imperial warships. Each piece of twisted metal represented years of construction, countless resources, and the lives of crews who had believed themselves invincible. Now they drifted as monuments to the Empire's first true defeat. The silence on the bridge was absolute, except for the occasional groan of stressed metal and the whisper of recycled air through damaged ventilation systems. Kethavar's yellow eyes stared unseeing at displays that showed only static. His mind refused to process what had happened, how an entire Imperial fleet could be destroyed so easily by primitives who should have been cowering in terror. Then he heard footsteps. The sound was impossible, His ship's docking bays were sealed, the airlocks damaged beyond repair, yet the steady rhythm of boots on metal decking echoed through the silent bridge, growing closer with each passing second. 3 figures emerged from the shadows near the bridge entrance, moving with quiet confidence through the damaged compartment. They wore simple uniforms in shades of blue and grey, with no visible breathing apparatus, despite the alien atmosphere that filled the ship. Most shocking of all, they appeared completely human. The leader was a woman of perhaps 40 years, her black hair streaked with silver and pulled back in a practical style. Her dark eyes held depths that spoke of experience beyond her apparent age. She walked directly to Kethvar's command chair, without hesitation, her companions flanking her, like an honor guard. "I am Admiral Han Seo of the Solar Defense Force," she said, her words spoken in perfect Zeltharian dialect. "We need to talk." Kethvar's scaled jaw dropped open in shock. The woman's pronunciation was flawless, her accent that of the Imperial core worlds. She spoke his language better than many natives, using formal military terminology that suggested deep familiarity with Zeltharian culture. "How impossible," he whispered, his voice hoarse from screaming orders during the battle. "You're breathing our atmosphere, speaking our tongue. How?" Admiral Han moved closer, her expression calm but implacable. "Your empire has conquered 847 worlds, Admiral. We've been watching your expansion for centuries. We've seen the slaves working in your mines, the destroyed cultures ground beneath your boots, the suffering you spread wherever your ships appear." She gestured to her companions, both of whom looked entirely human, despite their obvious comfort. "In the alien environment. We've walked among your people, learned your languages, studied your tactics. Every world you've conquered, every species you've enslaved, we've been there, recording, remembering." Kethvar's mind reeled as implications crashed over him like waves. "You've been spying on us? For how long?" "Long enough to understand what you truly are," Han replied. "The warning we gave your fleet wasn't just about defending Earth, Admiral. It was about ending your empire's expansion into civilized space." Through the bridge's damaged viewports, something caught Kethvar's attention. Space, which had appeared empty moments before, was suddenly filled with massive shapes emerging from what seemed like nothingness. Ships materialized, as if stepping out of folded space itself, their hulls gleaming with technology that made Imperial vessels look primitive by comparison. Dozens of ships appeared, then hundreds, each one larger than the Death's Herald had been in its prime. Their designs were sleek and organic, suggesting advanced understanding of physics that the Empire had never achieved. Energy signatures from the vessels made Kethvar's remaining sensors scream warnings about power levels that shouldn't be possible. "Colony ships," Admiral Han explained, following his gaze. "We've been spreading across the galaxy for 3 centuries, establishing hidden settlements on worlds your scouts never found. Every star system you thought was empty, every region of space you considered worthless. We were there first." She pulled a small device from her uniform and activated a holographic display that filled the air above them. The projection showed the galaxy in 3 dimensions, with thousands of points of light scattered across the spiral arms. Each light pulsed with gentle blue radiance, representing human colonies that had been established in secret. 73. 100 worlds, Han said quietly. "Hidden bases, research stations, manufacturing centers. We've built an entire civilization in the spaces between your conquered territories. We've been preparing for this day since your empire first began its expansion." Kethvar stared at the display in growing horror. The human presence wasn't limited to a single world. They had quietly colonized vast regions of the galaxy, while the Empire focused on conquering primitive civilizations. The scale of preparation was staggering. "We're done hiding," Han continued, deactivating the hologram. "Your attack on Earth was the final provocation we were waiting for." She handed him a data pad, its surface inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. The device felt warm in his scaled hands, pulsing with energy that made his claws tingle. "Take this message to your Emperor," she said. "Tell him his expansion ends now. Tell him that Earth offers the Zeltharian Empire the same choice you gave to every world you conquered." Kethvar activated the pad with trembling fingers. The message that appeared was written in high imperial script, formal and diplomatic, but carrying an undertone of absolute certainty. At its heart was a single word that made his blood run cold. Surrender. Your terms, he asked weakly. Immediate cessation of all military expansion. Release of all enslaved populations. Reparations to conquered worlds. Withdrawal to your original territory under human supervision. Han's voice carried no emotion, but her words struck like hammer blows. The same terms you've never offered to anyone else. And if we refuse? Admiral Han's expression never changed, but something in her eyes made Kethvar shrink back in his chair. Then you'll discover what a species looks like when it's had 800 years to prepare for war, Admiral. You've seen what our defensive capabilities can accomplish. You haven't seen what we've built for offense. The display around them flickered, showing brief glimpses of weapons that existed beyond Kethvar's understanding. Ships that could fold space around themselves, weapons that could ignite stars, technology that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. Choose carefully, Han said as her delegation prepared to leave. The galaxy has suffered under your empire long enough. Surrender, and your people can learn to live in peace. Refuse, and discover why every other species in this galaxy fears the day humanity stops hiding. The three humans walked away as quietly as they had arrived, leaving Kethvar alone with his thoughts and the data pad that felt heavier than worlds. Through his viewports he watched their ship, a vessel so advanced it seemed more grown than built, disappear into folded space. His own damaged flagship began limping toward the edge of the solar system, its engines barely functional but sufficient to carry news that would shatter an empire's confidence forever. Behind him, Earth continued its ancient rotation, blue and peaceful in the starlight. But Kethvar now knew the truth. That innocent-looking world wasn't just